What's going on, my 45,000 amazing friends? I hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic today. And if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. Do a whole bunch of tips, tricks, tutorials on photography and filmmaking stuff, and generally a whole bunch of Sony stuff. So yeah, consider subscribing. But today we're going to be talking about my favorite lens, and it's a question I've been asked quite a lot on Instagram and obviously my YouTube channel as well. And I actually did a couple of polls on YouTube and Instagram just to see what kind of lenses you guys actually preferred. But for the obvious reason, it really depends on what you're actually shooting, what the job is for. But just in general, what is your favorite focal length for pretty much just everything? If you had one lens, what would you choose? And that is a question I've been getting quite a lot. And the one focal length, the one lens, this is on full frame, it's the 35mm focal length. That is my absolute favorite. And it has to be the 35 F1.4 GM. Now I actually have to explain the reasons why it is this lens, because there are multiple other lenses that are cheaper than this, like the Sony F1.8, which is tons cheaper, and it performs almost the same as this one. You've got other brands as well. I think Sigma do their 35mm lens, and then I think you've got a Tamron as well that do their 35mm lens, but this one, it just really hits that spot. And the big thing about that 35-1.4 is that you're gonna get some really good low light performance, but there are actually downsides to gmaster lenses. We've known this for quite some time now, and the 85mm is actually one of those ones that has a lot of downsides, but this is like my second lens that I use in commercials. The main lens that I actually use in commercials is actually the 35mm. I'll pick this up straight away now for pretty much majority of my shots, mainly for the fact that with the 35mm you can get quite close to a subject and it not look too distorted, and you can actually get quite wide for it to actually fit in enough in the scene to not actually go down into a wider lens or into a tighter lens. So I feel like 35 is just that right, it's just a sweet spot, whereas 50mm, I feel like it's just a touch too tight if you're trying to go for that wide shot. So if you did have the 50mm, or if you did have the 50mm f1.2, you would probably invest in the 24mm f1.4, which we're shooting on right now, because then you've got that wide, you've got that kind of telephoto sort of look, and then you'd probably get the 85 just to get, you know, really nice close portrait shots. But 35 is fabulous, and yeah, like I was saying just before, the downsides of this one is actually the focus breathing. But in saying that, focus breathing compensation has been added in the FX6 and the A7IV. And I absolutely thank Sony for doing that, because they're revitalizing the G-Master lenses and they are pretty much making them better just through firmware updates in cameras. So that is so good. But if you don't know what breathing compensation does, essentially, if you do have focus breathing in your lens, the camera pretty much accounts for that. So it'll crop in a little bit, and then once you do minimum focusing distance and furthest focusing distance, it'll actually stop any sort of focus breathing, which is so good. Actually, before we continue, I'd just like to say thank you to each and every one of you guys that have subscribed to my YouTube channel, and each and every one of you guys have actually purchased my Lut Pack. If you are seeing this video right now, this is graded with my Lut Pack on my website, so link will be in the description below if you do want to get this look on the A7IV. You can use actually that look on the FX6 as well. Gives a nice sort of pinkish tones to the skin tones as opposed to that sort of greenish look. Really depends on what you're after, but it can give you a good start as well for some different colors. But anyway, back into the video. But one of the biggest things about the G-Master lenses is definitely that bokeh quality. Bokeh or bokeh? I'm Aussie. I'm gonna say bokeh. The quality on this is just phenomenal. Like the roll off is just perfect. It's buttery smooth and it's amazing. The biggest difference that I saw when shooting on say f2.8 lenses or even f1.8 lenses is that the fall off just isn't as good. Even if you have a really tight compression, the fall off just isn't as good. But it's the kind of the bokeh quality as well. It's much creamier on the G-Master lenses, and it's not really that distracting. Some lenses, like my Tamron 28-75, it's great, but it has a little bit distracting bokeh, and I really didn't see the use of that in a lot of my videos, and until I actually got the G-Master lenses, and I was like, man, that's a big difference. Like the bokeh actually is not distracting, it looks creamy, and I could just focus purely on the subject, and that's absolutely what you want your audience to do. And one of the other things that I love about this is that you can do autofocus and manual focus on the lens. But I actually do have a custom button on my cameras to, you know, switch autofocus, manual focus. I mean, especially on the FX6, I've got an autofocus, manual focus switch specifically. And that is actually handy when you don't have a lens that has this feature, but it is on the lens and it does make it a little bit easier. Now, the great thing about this 35mm lens as well is it is tack sharp wide open. You can shoot pretty much everything wide open if you really wanted to. But obviously I don't recommend shooting everything wide open. Actually having too much blur just doesn't look really natural. I generally stop this down to maybe f2.5 or f2.8 sometimes and shoot at that, and it just still looks phenomenal. Really depends on the situation and what I'm trying to achieve, and obviously what kind of light is available to me as well, because at an f1.4 you're gonna be letting in so much light, so it's gonna really help that low light performance of your camera. So comment below, I'd really love to know your thoughts on if you had to choose one lens for pretty much everything, what lens would you choose? So comment below. So I do think the 35mm f1.4 is paired perfectly with this camera, especially if you do throw it on a gimbal. It's not too big, it's just the right size and the right weight for pretty much every gimbal. Whereas the 85mm, you can see the difference. It is a behemoth. It is so thick and it is so heavy, but it's a phenomenal lens on its own. It's a whole nother story. But this lens is just perfectly weighted. I feel like it's the best size for the A7IV. Ergonomically on the camera itself, it just feels perfect. Now, when it does come down to the aperture ring as well, this one is clicked, but you can actually declick it with the option on the side there. But one of the things about this aperture ring is that I pretty much never use it. It doesn't suit my workflow. I'm not used to adjusting the aperture on here unless I'm using a cine lens. Generally, your cine lenses are all manual, so you're doing the aperture through that. But this is a complete automatic lens and I just adjust it directly through the camera anyway. Now, one of the biggest reasons why I actually invested the Gmaster lenses is the manual focusing, because it has super fast autofocus in this one and the manual focusing is pretty much linear. So that is one of the biggest reasons, because I don't always shoot autofocus in my commercials. I'm probably maybe 70% autofocus and 30% manual, maybe sometimes 60-40. There are some scenes where I'm pretty much 100% manual focus. It really depends on what I'm trying to achieve here. But when it comes to autofocus tracking on the A7IV, I mean, it's so good. It is so sticky and it's super accurate, so good. But I do love to flick it into manual focus and just dial in that manual focus perfectly with this lens. And having a nice linear motor in this just makes it so much easier. And also paired with focus mapping on the A7IV makes it even easier, because I've said it in a few videos before that sure, you've got focus peaking on, it's red, you can see what's in focus, but when it's at a distance, sometimes it is really hard to see if it actually is perfectly in focus, where focus mapping actually shows you exactly what is in focus. So it's clear, it's perfectly clear what's in focus, and then blue is what's in front and red is what's behind, so you can actually physically see exactly what is in focus. So this lens is perfect when it comes to manual focusing. But overall, if you can't afford the Gmaster lens, I mean, don't buy it. Buy the Sony lens, buy the f1.8. Sure, you're losing a little bit of light, but the image quality is beautiful anyway. It's a lot lighter and it definitely is a lot cheaper as well. But absolutely recommend this lens. It is my favorite on the A7IV and on the FX6 as well. But hopefully you enjoyed that video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. That would be absolutely amazing. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you already haven't. And guys, I'll see you in the next one. All right, let's get it.